Linux, and certainly containers is one way of doing that. So could this end up pivoting into sort of an over-the-air edge Kubernetes orchestration system? Perhaps, right? I think it's a little too early for me to make any conjectures there, but it makes a heck of a lot of sense, I would say, right? If we're out there, managing these devices, certainly it would make a lot of sense to bring in the capability of managing all the container apps that are running out there on those devices too. So I guess what I'll say there is stay tuned. It's an area we're very interested in for sure.
Okay, great. Well, I did mention to the submitters, I know, Dan, you need to run. We will capture these Q&As and make some connections to you. There's a couple more questions in here and an offer of help with Honeywell also.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, folks. There's quite a few of you on this call. Thanks again for your time. I hope this was interesting. Would love to see where we can help you, where you can help us, and help field any other questions you have. Feel free to reach out to me through Jonathan. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, well, next up is me. So let me get this set up and we'll get things kicked off with this joint solution showcase. All right, if someone could confirm that you're seeing the presentation view, that would be perfect.
We sure are, John.
All right, great. Well, hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining. Really excited to have you here. And appreciate you sticking around to the near the end here of Roadmap Rodeo. So I'm joined here with Chris Applegate. He's a senior solution consultant with the Dell Technologies Customer Solution Showcase. And we're going to give you an overview of a fairly new joint initiative between our companies, VMware Solution Showcase, which is embedded in the Dell Customer Solution Center. We've also got a couple interesting demos that Chris will take you through. And finally, this is a new evolving initiative. Like we're looking for inputs all the time. We're setting up some processes to gather those. But as we go through this, you're thinking about ways that there's stuff that you're working on that might make sense to include here, or you have ideas for how we could communicate this more broadly or better to Dell sellers and VMware sellers. We're certainly looking for all of that input. So please reach out. And of course, none of this would be live today without the work of everyone on the broader team. So there's several of us on the DTS team, of course, the Dell CSC, and then there's a broad cross-functional team from products, marketing, sales enablement, across both of our companies. And again, we're looking for more participation and inputs there. So certainly reach out if you have an interest. As far as what we're going to cover, right? Chris is going to go through a little bit around what is the CSC, because the VMware showcase is embedded in the CSC. So I think it's kind of important to have the bigger picture of where this plays. We're also going to talk about, some early engagements in the showcase, and then around what's next, what's coming in FY22 and how you might be able to help with that. And of course, we've got some demos and Q&A. So Dell Customer Solution Centers, I think most of you know what an EBC is, Executive Briefing Center. And this is, CSC is kind of the technical counterpart to that. So Chris, why don't you explain a little bit more around what is the Dell Customer Solution Center?
Sure, thanks, Jonathan. So again, thanks for having us here to talk on the Roadmap Rodeo. My name is Chris Applegate, and I am one of the solution architects in the Solution Centers. And our charter in the Solution Centers, since we were formed about 9 or 10 years ago, heritage Dell, was to directly engage with our customers and partners to demonstrate the value of the Dell Technologies portfolio. And in doing so, we've built a network of 19 global locations. And these are places that are staffed with subject matter experts and equipment and rooms for customers to meet in. Obviously, in these days of COVID, the meeting on site isn't, a lot of customers aren't wild about that, but we have been doing from the very beginning a large amount of virtual engagements already. So we've just increased and ramped that up. We do cover the entire Dell Technologies portfolio, but because nobody can be an expert in everything, we have people who specialize in certain areas. An example is I specialize in our cloud native, VCF, Tanzu, and Kubernetes areas of focus, but we have other people who focus in mid-range storage, high-end storage, network security, HPC, AI, ML, all the different domains, even EUC, that we cover as Dell Technologies, we try and staff with subject matter experts and equipment. When account teams do bring customers to us, it generally takes the form of the three lower bullets that you see there, and they align roughly to the customer's interest or the sales motion. Early on, when customers are trying to figure out what is Dell Technologies' position or perspective or offerings in a certain area. Maybe it's what is Dell doing in multi-cloud? Maybe it's what's Dell doing with cloud native applications? Right? And this is where we will engage in a technical briefing. These are half-hour, 60-minute, very standardized conversations. And oftentimes there are members in the field who are already covering this, but we offer the capability to cover this ourselves. As that maturity in the customer's interest and in that deal begins to progress, we then move on to virtual whiteboarding sessions. These are a couple hours long, and it's really after a customer says, all right, I understand what Dell Technologies does in a particular area, but what would that look like in my environment? How big would it need to be? How would it interface with my top of rack switches? What teams should I bring in for this to be successful? And these, again, are where we start to really customize the conversation for our customers. And then finally, towards the end of the sales motion, the customer understands what we do in a particular area, what that could look like in their environment and how they could use it. Maybe then they want to kick the tires of it before they purchase. This is where, through equipment that we host out of our labs, we can offer customers to execute their own 1 or 2 week virtual proof of concept, where they VPN in and they actually run their own, maybe it's basic functional testing, maybe it's light performance testing, and work through their own test plans to actually come to a decision on success criteria as to whether or not they want to go ahead and purchase that solution or not. What we noticed was, obviously from the very beginning, even before we joined teams with VMware and the rest of EMC, we do a lot of VMware already. But we really wanted to ramp that up over the last year. So this initiative, as we came together between the two teams, we said, we really want a manicured, curated conversation to occur inside the solution centers around all the great new things that VMware is doing. And that's where the VMware Showcase came to be, was it really is meant to be a precursor to a lot of these, where maybe the customer doesn't have necessarily a specific function or product they want to see. They might want to see a couple of them working together. So it's important to understand, we'll go in a little bit more on what the showcase actually includes here in the coming slides, but when customers engage with us, there's no cost whatsoever. The Dell EMC account teams can go ahead and submit the engagement requests, and then we'll set up an internal scoping call and just kick around, okay, this is what we want to do. These are the things that the customer would like to see. These are their problems they've had in the past. This is the direction we'd like to go. And then we can get that on the calendar, usually in a matter of a couple of days. Right? Again, I can't stress this enough, but there is no cost whatsoever to the customers. Right? This is just part of being in the Dell Technologies family. So hopefully that does a good intro there, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. And there's a website here if anyone wants to follow up with more information, or feel free to reach out with the questions around the broader CSC. And so as Chris mentioned, the showcase kind of came out of these conversations that he was having, he and his fellow solution consultants around, VMware was becoming a more frequent topic of conversation, and how the VMware solutions fit in with these Dell solutions to, solve customer use cases. Right? And at the same time, if you look back at, say, like the last year of what VMware's launched, we've launched a lot of new stuff, and that's generated a lot of questions from customers. And so there was an opportunity there to provide some tools for folks like Chris to be able to present those solutions to customers. Right. In addition, we've also been, VMware and Dell have been looking at expanding our target customer segments, beyond just these IT operators and IT admins into this developer segment. So how might the solution showcase be able to present some of these developer-focused solutions to those sorts of customers? And that's really where this whole solution showcase came about. Addressing these key problem statements of how can I showcase this broad new VMware portfolio to customers in a way that highlights the joint integration between Dell EMC and VMware, right? And how can folks in the CSE educate customers on all the new offerings at Dell Tech, like Tanzu, VCF on VxRail, Bitfusion, on and on. There's a number of new, very compelling solutions that we'd like to be able to demonstrate to them. And so, this is kind of our core vision behind the showcase. Right? There's a couple key words here to highlight, and one of those is activate. Right? So we're not only just building this showcase, like we're activating it, trying to drive customers into it, ensuring that there's compelling and engaging and up-to-date content. And through that, we're looking for different ways to continue to gather that input. So kind of back to my initial request, if you have suggestions, definitely send them our way. And we're looking to build out processes and how to do that. But in the meantime, let's figure this out. Also integrated. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jonathan, one good point to introduce here is the idea of, I mentioned early on that the Solution Center has been working with VMware since the very beginning, right? But when we start to talk about onboarding new technologies, we're very much a demand fulfillment organization, not necessarily a demand generation. So we have to wait for the account teams to get that messaging, to source the customers, generate customers' interest, and then bring it into the CSC. And what that usually means is for new technology, like say the Tanzu portfolio, sure, the general purpose CSC probably would have had it in the first 6 months, 12 months, sometime in there after the word really got out and the account team started sourcing customers. But here, when we can have distinct formulated approach, we had it available the day it was launched. Right? And we had subject matter experts ready to talk to customers immediately on it. So we could interject that in our conversations. Customers were coming in for container conversations. Well, we did just actually activate our Tanzu Kubernetes Grid solution. Would you like to see that as well? Right? And so that was a powerful differentiator on bootstrapping and really getting this thing started in a way that might not have happened for a longer time.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple slides from now, I've got there's a couple of examples of how that worked that Chris will give a little color commentary on to give you can see the showcase in action. The other one to call out here is, as Chris described the customer solution showcase, it's something that most Dell sellers are familiar with, right? If they're not, they should be. It's a powerful tool. So it's already part of the pre-sales process. So it was important for us to build the showcase as part of an existing pre-sales process. So it wasn't something new that sellers needed to learn about. It was something that kind of fit in with the sales process as it exists. It's just an additional tool to help them move sales through the pipeline. And so what actually is the showcase? Well, first of all, there is actually stuff behind it. So back when we could go in person to our offices, if you went into Dell Round Rock 3, and went to the CSC and the little mini data center, you'd see a couple racks, branded VMware Solution Showcase, and lots of Dell hardware running VMware technologies. So that was actually there, right? And of course, engagements would happen in person. For now, they're all delivered virtually. And as Chris mentioned, these solutions are they've been enabled to be delivered 100% virtually, which means they can also be expanded globally. So another important aspect of this showcase. Now, as far as what do we show customers about that? You saw those racks. What are we actually showing them, though? Here is kind of how we've outlined this in kind of like a catalog format. So you'll notice that in the upper right, you got 5 colored circles. Those are, of course, are VMware's core 5 strategic priorities. And what we're doing is building out the showcase along those solutions. So solutions map back to those priorities. And within each of those solutions, right, there's a little more specifics around the technologies and the use cases. Right, we've got some examples here. Right, there's a lot more behind that. But you can see, we started off phase 1, beginning of this year, really kind of an MVP building out around this multi-cloud solution and looking at how customers might transform their infrastructure. And then most recently, we've rolled out solutions around the modern applications priorities. And you'll see a lot of topics around Tanzu. And that's continuing to build both on, well, before we get into what we're going to do next, let me give you an example. So this helps. One of the questions we get is around, well, do you do technology demos? And of course, the answer is yes, but it's a little different than a typical demo that you might think of. This isn't necessarily a single point technology demo. When an engagement comes in, as Chris mentioned, he would scope this out, look at what the customer is trying to do, what they're asking for, and put that together, but then add in things that they would actually need, but might not necessarily know a whole lot about into this engagement, and then present them a solution demo. So as you can see here, example customer 1, it might pull items from, from the menu on the left, from the menu in the middle, and then on the right, and that would be the solution engagement that would be presented. And so here's, it took about a quarter to ramp opportunities. We are seeing a steady increase in demand overall. So once, launched the MVP in July, so far delivered over 30 customer engagements, a revenue pipeline of about $30 million. Right? And some important aspects here to note, of course, there's a lot of interest in multi-cloud, but you'll see there's a growing interest in Tanzu, which was, of course, pleasantly surprising that customers are actively asking for more information about this. You'll also notice that there's 2 POCs highlighted here with Medtronic and FedEx. And let me back up 1 second here, make sure that everyone notes the note on the top of this slide. These are, this is just for reference, so everyone can get a sense of the sorts of customers that are coming in and what they're asking about. This is not public information. Many of these are still in negotiations, so please, it's just for your own reference. Don't use this internally or externally. But there are 2 POCs, both with Medtronic and FedEx. One's been complete, one's in process, that really came about is because of the showcase. So, Chris, I wonder if you could add a little color commentary to those 2 POCs, because I think it's kind of a powerful case study story.
Yeah, first let's talk about Medtronic. So this is one of those ideas where it really made a difference. If we didn't have the VMware showcase, we would have had to tell Medtronic that we couldn't help them. So they came in and the account team, as with many Dell account teams, said, hey, customers hearing about this Tanzu stuff. They're really interested in it. But what they really want is they want something they can go and put in a hospital. And they've got 50, 60 of these hospitals. They need a small footprint. And so we want to look at VCF, but the problem is it's too big. Literally that week, we had just gotten the funding and the equipment in and installed for the new VCF4 consolidated topology, where you can actually take a VCF installation down to as few as 4 nodes. And so within hours, we had that customer in on the VPN and kicking the tires of that solution. And so right now we've pinged the account team. They ran that for 2 weeks, and we pinged the account team and they say, yeah, the ELA agreement is in negotiations in flight right now. So we would not have been able to do that because it was the only consolidated consolidated VCF with TKG in the entire CSC. Just happened to be coming up at that time because of the showcase. The other one I'll highlight on is FedEx. Obviously, everybody's familiar with FedEx. Again, this is NDA and between inside Dell Technologies, but FedEx is actually Dell's largest buyer of VxRail. And so this is a tremendous opportunity. They've got a mega account team associated with this. And this account team is, they said, hey, look, FedEx, we want you to learn Tanzu. We've got a whole bunch of different plays with a ton of different businesses inside FedEx. We want to talk to you guys about Tanzu. And they said, unfortunately, with the days of COVID, we're just strapped to try and get anything into our internal labs, trying to get it on the corporate, trying to get people into our data centers and all that type of stuff. We don't have time for a POC if we got to set it up. So the account team came to us in the solution centers and said, hey, look, we're going to come up with a list of a couple of different orgs inside FedEx to do Tanzu pursuits on. And we would like to go ahead and seed some gear to dedicate to the FedEx team. Do you guys have any familiarity with standing up this VCF4 on VxRail with Tanzu? We said, yeah, we do it all the time, and we can build you a pod and dedicate it to FedEx. So they shipped it directly to us. We stood it up, and they continue to hammer away on it on a daily basis in pursuit of Tanzu opportunities, right? And we hear back from the VMware account team saying this was a game changer. This has allowed us to do so much more because we have a persistent environment that we can take customer to customer. As long as we have these well-qualified opportunities and that continuous stream of revenue, right? These POCs will not, it's not just a single, point on the horizon that we get revenue from, but it will be continuous, new LOB after new LOB, right? Tanzu capability A, Tanzu capability B. So we've already started to see some gains on that. It's already got some early wins for a couple $1 million.
Great. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Chris. And notice okay, Joe has a question here, which is kind of relevant to this slide around extending the showcase to industry use cases. So yes, Joe, we would love to talk with you about your ideas on how to do that. So let's follow up afterward. In the meantime, here's some ideas around what we're thinking for FY22. Right, so I know I put work in progress draft here. This is not set in stone, but the core idea is that we're building out this catalog to ensure we're covering the full set of strategic priorities. So you'll notice we're adding in items from digital workspace and intrinsic security and networking. But those items that are in those blocks, these are ones that we've initially thought, hey, these might fit. We've got some information that they're high priority, but we're also looking at running out a roadshow over the next several weeks here and gathering inputs. So if you would like to be part of that, please reach out to me. Let me know. We'll loop you into that. We're looking to try to hit on what's most important for our customers and for VMware, and that's what we really want to focus on. So Joe, hopefully that helps a little bit. We'll certainly follow up with you afterward, and you are definitely on the list to invite to those sessions.
Yeah, so Joe's follow-up question there, he just posted at the bottom, is PowerStore in the showcase? You are reading our minds. The PowerStore 3000X arrived last week. It is up, installed, and attached with a couple of different Kubernetes demos on it. We're a little limited just because of where the PowerStore is in its development, what VMware version it's on and that compatibility with TKG. But we've got some stuff and we are absolutely looking to ramp that up. I mean, that is as fresh off the press as it can get. Now, actually, I'll show you some of that here any second. So
yeah, well, it's over to you, Chris. I'm not actually sure these are the demos you're going to show, but take it away and show whatever you're going to do.
Fantastic. All right. So yeah, let's go through a couple of the demos. It would be, remiss of me to not touch on our #1 demo, by far, the thing that everybody has wanted to see and they continue to ask about. Account teams say customers need to see this before they're even interested in having a multi-cloud conversation, right? And so I'm going to use the power of Hollywood here because nobody wants to sit through a 40 gig data copy. But what we're going to do, right, the multi-cloud story and the idea of consistent infrastructure so I can establish consistent operations and services to my end users, that only works if I can actually move my workloads. So I want to see a live move. And so this is a video of exactly one of those ones that we would do. If a customer wanted to sit through it, shoot, we'll do it. But most customers say, all right, I'm willing to see this on the same demo environment you've been in, just a previous recording of it. So this is a demo, and I'll skip around on this a little bit just because you guys have seen this type of stuff before, where I take a VM and I start pinging it. And you can see it responds very quickly because it's sitting in the data center next to me. And we're going to take this VM and we're going to move it to the other side of the country. Right? We're going to use the power of here we have a VCF on VxRail, and we're going to attach that to a one node VMC on AWS cluster sitting up in the sky. And I believe this one was in Chicago or Virginia. And so we take that, we select everything, and here's where we start talking about, you know, since we're moving something live, we sure don't want something to go wrong mid-flight. So if I make a mistake in some of these selections, it would be great if the tool would actually detect those. So we actually do some error injection here. You'll see I've actually selected the wrong data store. And so when I say I want to move this, we also go over here, layer 2 extensions. So we're actually moving the IP and the entire network with the VM, so we don't have to change host names or IPs. Here is that error. If that had gone off, this would have been catastrophic. So again, showing that the tool does a lot more than just a simple data copy. And so then we kick off the move and we run this ping the entire time so that they can see the exact moment the network state does its handoff. And you'll see that we drop one ping and then all of a sudden it jumps to 40 to 50 milliseconds. That was the VM's network state moving across the country while staying at the same IP address. All right, again, here's a little bit of that Hollywood magic. And we highlight the exact moment of transfer. Here it is. Right there. So you can see it went from less than 1 millisecond, you know, which means local, to 45 to 50 milliseconds. And then it's consistent there. And so the user never would have seen a single thing go wrong. All their services now are just being served out of infrastructure in the public cloud. Maybe this affords them a different, you know, cost model. Maybe this affords them access to AWS native tools, whatever the reason is, right? They now have local access to those AWS services. And, you know, then we like to start talking about, well, what happens when these inevitable economic conditions change? And it's time to bring this virtual machine back, right? So you can see there's the actual move where it disappeared out of my on-premises data center and appears over there still on, right? And then I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. Here we do the exact reverse. You can see it's a 45 millisecond ping. I go through the reverse steps and say, let's bring this boy home. And he'll drop 2 pings in this demo when he comes back. Yeah, this was Chicago. So Austin to Chicago. Same types of setup, etc. But this really helps customers see, okay, this isn't smoke and mirrors, right? This is using the same constructs. I know how to select clusters. I know how to select folders. I know how to select data stores. My guys are trained on that. We've used vMotion before. I know what a VC or what a network port group is. These aren't foreign constructs to me. This is maybe a little bit more attainable. Right? Again, the idea of the showcase is to use it to generate, you know, follow-on engagements that are more deep dives on singular technologies. An example on this would be, okay, Chris, you got me. I'm interested now. Can I bring in my technical team to hear about how you got this done and what it looks like? And maybe we do a live move during that one. Right? So again, Hollywood magic. Fast forward. Oh, and there's the 2 drops, and now it's less than 1 millisecond. Right? So this is by far our most popular demo, just because people want to see the promise that we keep talking about in action. Right? But the demos can extend, you know, in a lot of different directions. Many of our customers say, you know what, I'm not interested in public cloud. Right? I'm interested in all the Tanzu goodness. Right? And so one of the other demos that I'd like to show is, what if you just had a couple minutes to talk to a customer about how compatible Tanzu can be with their existing cloud native capabilities. This was a demo we did for our internal tech conference, right? We call it Tech Summit here. And so that's all the internal Dell technical sellers. And we had just a couple of minutes to do it. So let me see if I can share my audio. So this is narrated and everything. This is meant to be a quick hit just to bait the hook for follow-up conversations. My name is Chris Applegate with the Customer Solution Centers. In the Customer Solution Centers, our mission is to directly engage with our customers to demonstrate the value of the Dell Technologies portfolio. In doing so, we've built 19 locations that can host these conversations with our experts. One of those is today. Infrastructure as code is the idea of using tools developers are already familiar with to now also control your infrastructure. GitOps is one way of doing that. Using GitHub and its inherent code control mechanisms, we declare and manage the desired state of your Kubernetes application. Here, in this repository, we have the Kubernetes manifests of an example application. This application is a simple web app that allows users to vote on their favorite fast food. It has multiple web tier containers, allowing it to load balance and provide resilience. Here, on my VMware Cloud Foundation cluster with vSphere 7 and Kubernetes installed, I have two Tanzu Kubernetes guest clusters, one for development and another for the production instance of this application. The continuous delivery tool that I've set up here is called Argo CD. It's responsible for watching the Kubernetes manifest in both the dev and prod folders for any changes. When I make a change to the number of replicas for my development instance of the application using GitHub's own tools, Argo will detect that change and enforce it automatically. Here, you see the number of replicas automatically increase. On the production instance, I've set it up differently. Here, it will track the changes and notify me, but it waits for me to confirm the declared state change. Come see this demo and many others at the Dell Technologies Customer Solution Centers. So that gives that a good overview of what if you just had a couple minutes and you wanted to show a CI/CD tool that a customer might already be using, right? So again, we're just giving you a quick taste of some of the small demos. Many of these are done live in actual customer engagements, but we always have a backup video just in case. Another one that we like to talk through when we're talking about AI and ML and the customers being able to embrace these new technologies as developers without needing to learn how to stand up that hardware or dedicating it to specific workstations and desktops, we talk about BitFusion. So one of the demos that we go through for BitFusion is consuming BitFusion services three ways. The first way as a virtual machine, right, that is remote to the GPUs. Here we're illustrating that we're passing through 4 GPUs to the BitFusion appliance, and he is sharing those out. And then we can go over to the GPU client that has no affiliation whatsoever with that server, except for access to him over the network, and we can execute GPU commands from him. So this will be the first phase. Just illustrate remote connectivity to GPUs for AI/ML functions in a VM. The next stage we do is we go through, all right, well, now what if you wanted to do that in a container? We'll actually build the container, right? We pull up and construct the entire Docker manifest and the entire Docker file, build it, push it into a repo, and pull it back down from a server. Right? So here I'm doing a BitFusion list GPUs. This is on that virtual machine. He should have no GPUs, but because BitFusion is there, he actually has the availability of 4 different GPUs. Right? And here I'm going to run a simple command using one of those GPUs. Dear BitFusion, gods in the sky, give me access to 1 GPU to run this command. It schedules it, runs the command, and releases that GPU back into the provisioned pool. Right? But that's a really basic command. What you're going to see when we actually build out the Docker file, and here I actually change it to 4 GPUs, so showing that I can have anywhere from 1 to 4. Right? Depends on how many GPUs your box actually has. Right? But when we do the containerized version, we'll actually do a real Jupyter notebook with a PyTorch file, right? To actually step through some real AI/ML workloads. So here you can see me breaking down for the customer. This is exactly how we built the file. This is how we're bringing in each element. This is how we grab the license and credentials for BitFusion. This is how we go out and use an existing NVIDIA container registry image. This is how we add to that image Jupyter notebook. Right? And so now from this same remote host, I build that Docker file, and then I'll go ahead and run it. Right? And I'll show you a good quick little demo of what that looks like. Again, using some Hollywood magic if you don't want to sit through a Docker build. Now I'm running that container. I hit it in a browser, and I can go out here and start running through some PyTorch workloads. And you can see it grabbing a GPU. You can see this is a Bitfusion 1 GPU instance. So it's gone and remotely borrowed a GPU. And this is actually looking at a bunch of elements of clothing just to try and detect, is this a shoe? Is this a shirt? Is this a dress? Right? To critique your own fashion, not that any of us need any help with that. Right? It's a good day if I'm just wearing pants on my Zoom calls. All right. So now you see we've delivered it in a container. We've delivered it in a virtual machine. Let's bring this story together. You can see I'm using one of those GPUs. Let's bring this story together and say, all right, well, how does this integrate to the rest of the Tanzu portfolio? Now that you've got it in a container, can't you just run that in TKG? And so that's the next step that we do. We take that container, put it in a public registry, pivot over to a VCF on VxRail that has no GPUs in it whatsoever, right? And we take and run it in one of those Tanzu Kubernetes Grid native pods. Right, so I'm here over here. I'm in a Tanzu CLI, and there's my GPU manifest that I'm about to echo out. And you can see I'm simply taking that same public image that I created, K-Applegate BF Rapid demo there with 1 GPU. And then I can throw that at the cluster and access it. And so this shows that progression of access on a VM headlessly, put it into a container, access it there, put it into Kubernetes, and showing that progression for those developers, exactly how you would get that done, right, with a real workload. And again, you've already seen the Jupyter Hub output here. There it is running. You can see Jupyter GPU, 1 instance of that running. And I go ahead and I access it via the NSX provisioned load balancer. And there you have it, same thing. And I go ahead and run all the code and pivot back to the Bitfusion UI. And we can now see that 2 of my GPUs have been leased by instances of Jupyter Hub. Right, so this shows another good example for the developers, the people that are simply consuming the services out of this. Right, the last thing that I'll show you is one that is, the demo isn't fully built yet, but the infrastructure for it is. And this is, Joe, what you had talked about. So this is a VCF cluster sitting out here, and it's a storage demo where we wanted to take a TKG guest cluster. The TKG guest cluster in this case is called storage demo. And we want to be able to offer multiple tiers of storage to that cluster. Right? And the idea here is that you could tier based on performance and durability requirements. So maybe one application you can just have on the local vSAN. Right? The bulk of your applications are going to be just fine and well serviced on an all-flash local vSAN to all the nodes. Right? But then I actually also have another ability to add in a policy for an HCI mesh provided vSAN. So what you'll actually see is over here, you can see a couple of different workloads that are all running. Here, this one that says MX cluster, that's running on the local vSAN. This one here that says WLD vSAN, that's running on a different cluster. That's a vSAN running on a different cluster being accessed over HCI mesh, right? But by this cluster, that's that brand new feature that just came out in 7.0U1, right? And then lastly, because you asked, Joe, and solely because you asked, right? The last set of resources in storage class that I have are all running out on a power store, right? And that power store is presented via iSCSI directly to this particular node. And so here you can have a single cluster simultaneously consuming services. Right? Here's the actual Kubernetes view. I have a min.io object store sitting out on the HCI mesh. I have a MongoDB sitting out on the power store. and I have a WordPress with a backing database sitting on my local vSAN data store. All of these are fully functional apps, all consuming different storage resources on the same Tanzu cluster, depending on what the particular customer asks for. And so if I do a get my storage classes, you can see 3 different storage classes all simultaneously presented through the vSphere CSI to me. I just pick and choose. If I don't specify, it's going to use the vSAN onboard one. Again, this demo, we're still building. I mean, literally just finished some of the config about an hour before I hopped on this call. So it's hot off the press, and we're looking to do more and more with the power store as we start to build that idea around being able to leverage additional elements of the Dell Technologies portfolio once you get that beachhead of VCF or the modern SDDC portfolio into a customer. So hopefully that's whet your appetite a little, is that we have a spectrum of choices when it comes to the types of demos, ranging all the way from the just show me it working, when we talk about cloud portability, through more advanced stuff with TKG, AI/ML, and even incorporating other elements of storage into this. Are there any questions about any of the demos or even the larger CSC capabilities that anybody has?
I'm not seeing any in the chat.
Yeah, quiet group. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about the capabilities that we have from an enterprise infrastructure standpoint, but it would be remiss of me not to also mention that we have a lot of colleagues that cover other areas of the portfolio, right? So we've got end user computing specialized folks that do Horizon day in and day out, and we've got those regionally distributed throughout the globe. We've got a lot more folks than me that do stuff around VxRail, and even some that are now starting to pick up here, VCF4 and VCF4 on VxRail, right? But the idea behind this was to incubate those emerging ideas very quickly, get those capabilities stood up and ready to go ASAP, as close to launch as possible. All right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Chris. That was great. Getting a lot of good feedback on your demos, for sure.
Great.
Let me share my screen here, and we'll finish up the last couple slides. So shift into what's next. Right, so our key objectives, you kind of boil it down to number one, influencing sales, right? To do that, expanding the scope and increasing awareness. So that ties into, as we're kicking off this FY22 planning, looking for more avenues to collect feedback from BUs, from sellers, from really anyone who has particularly customer insights, would love to get that input. We'll go through a prioritization process, and then, as you saw on the prior slide, build that out into a catalog that would complete the picture of hitting all of the different 5 strategic priorities. So my requests for the attendees here today, we're looking, as I mentioned, looking for input on topics, help with prioritization, and help identifying additional communication channels, particularly how to reaching Dell and VMware sellers, right? So we are working with the DSAT team, but any additional channels would certainly appreciate those inputs. And then also events, and events, things like DT World, DTW, VMworld, of course, would love exposure there, but also things like webinars, customer forums, sales trainings. If you think there's an opportunity to highlight this to customers or to Dell sellers, it's something we'd certainly want to consider participating in.
Yeah, Jonathan, there's a question in chat. I'll go ahead and answer live. The question is, how do you plan to support this richness across the other key CSCs? So, our idea here is, especially with the days of COVID now, we're in an entirely remote environment as it is. And so we've been doing remote engagements pretty much back to back and nonstop since late February. And a number of those have even been for other regions. So it is really a global pool of content and equipment and personnel. So there's nothing stopping us from delivering these same capabilities to other regions as schedules afford. Obviously, at a certain point, we'll hit a threshold where, all right, there's enough to justify another resource delivering similar things in a local region to EMEA APJ. But we're going to have to let that demand first drive that, which is exactly why Jonathan was talking about identifying key metrics and making sure we align so that we can help build that case for A, continued investment, and B, increased investment.
All right, thanks, Chris. We've seen any other questions? We're going to open it up. It's your last opportunity. This was our presentation, so happy to go into a little more detail since we have some extra time. We had till 12. We'll end a little bit early with the session, but we have a little time to go a little deeper on some topics if you'd like. All right. Well, there's our contact information. If you've got any questions or would like to help provide some input on communications or content. And with that, we'll wrap this up.